There's nothing like league. And this is the Betfred Super League. No! Got me here. It took a big chunk out of me. Bleeding. It's bleeding. Oh no, it's bleeding. The thing just ripped my ear off. What do you think?
Hello again, everyone. It's that time of the week once again for the latest edition of Eddie and Stevo, the podcast. 30 minutes where, with the support of our friends at Betfred, we discuss all topics of rugby league. And what a busy show we have this week. Coincidentally, 4 years to the very day since my microphone welt on the golden rivet at Wigan and I hung up the mic forever. But here I am now. 4 years on, doing the same sort of thing, talking rubbish with Stevo for 30 minutes. Great to have you with us, Stevo. Great to have you back.
Hang on, Eddie. I've got to find some tissues. I'm welling up. The tears are rolling down either side of my nose, and I'm thinking, oh, it's a shame that Eddie went off the air. Oh. Well, we're getting our own back now, aren't we, mate? We're on this podcast.
We are. Look, as we speak, all 36 clubs are meeting to decide whether to adopt IMG's, some would say, controversial grading proposals that will shape the sport in 2025 and onwards. More about that in a few minutes. But right now, let's begin with the games last weekend in the Betfred Super League. And Stevo, Warrington's unbeaten record has gone. Wigan too good for them last Friday. What magnificent defence they showed.
Impressive, to say the least. You look through the team and it makes you feel a little bit old, Eddie, and I'm sure you feel the same way. Because there are new names coming through. It's not the older brigade that's hanging in there. It's a whole new ball game for Wigan. They've got young kids in there. They are on the rise. They are so impressive. But a lot of coaches over the years will say defence will win you the trophies. Evidently, at the end of any game, your defence is the one that counts. And they never allowed Warrington to even get into the match at all. It was wonderful viewing. I enjoyed every single second.
Yeah, I did too. But, Steve, here's a question for you. Who would be a referee or a video referee? Because there's no doubt Wigan were helped on their way by three crucial decisions. Brad O'Neill's try, it looked like the ball had bounced as he touched it down. The fingernail was on it for what looked like a millisecond. Is this sort of decision correct? What I'm saying, was it really a try? Can you call that a try with a fingernail on the ball?
It says in the laws of the game, downward pressure. With the hand, the finger, the thumb, if you want to include the fingernail, yes, it's a try. It's extremely difficult. And I think over the years, you can ask any coach, either ones that have retired or the ones that are still in charge now, they'll say, we just hope that it evens itself out throughout the season. Some will go against you, some will go for you. So therefore, there's no point in trying to put even more pressure on these people. Referees, God bless them. I hated them when I played. We didn't have video referees. If that was the case when I was playing, Eddie, I would have hated them as well. So let's get on with this sort of situation, is that it's a difficult job and let them get on with it. You've got to have respect. And that's as simple as that, is don't bother talking about it. The coaches should just say, you win some, you lose some. Well done.
Well, before we leave Wigan, let's just mention the fact that there are reports coming out from Australia today that the Warriors are keen on bringing the England international Luke Thompson home from the NRL. His contract apparently with the Bulldogs expires at the end of this year. He's reportedly on £430,000 a year. Wigan are reported to have offered him a deal that the Bulldogs can't match. Really?
Yeah, that's amazing, isn't it? They must have a few shillings under the under the pillowcase or something around that. Look, he's struggled to get back onto a regular selection down under. I think it's probably a wise move for him to come back to the UK because he really has not been playing on a regular basis over maybe the last 2 seasons. It wouldn't surprise me that he comes back to the UK. But what would surprise me is that they're going to pay that amount of money that is on now. It must be difficult to be able to sit on the sidelines and just keep counting that money without having to play.
Absolutely. Well, I think he wants to stay in Australia, obviously. He's been out with this foot injury. Do you know, he's only played 38 times, apparently, since his move from St Helens in 2020. But his family have settled well. He's close on £500,000. I bet they have, haven't they?
Yes, and it's a sort of a nice figure to settle down in any country, whether it be Timbuktu or whatever. and Eddie, they get so used to the, shall we say, the beaches and the good weather or whatever. It is difficult, but I think deep down inside, if you're a down-to-earth rugby league player, you want to play each week. I know he's getting a fistful of money, but it's not the same. You just want to prove that you can still do it. And I do hope he comes back and plays in the UK. I really do, because he's a talented player. It just hasn't worked out for him down under.
Well, we're going to look to be gaining momentum. This week, poor old Wakefield are the visitors to the DW Stadium, so it's virtually top against bottom. Now, look, we talked briefly about Wakefield last week. They are in a hole. No wins from 9 now. 4 points off the pace. They are doomed, you said last week, and you hit the headlines with that, Stevo. They all jumped on the back of that. They are doomed, says the guru. Well, the last team to be relegated, if IMG's proposals for 2025 and beyond get through this week, they might be that last team to get relegated. And it's a shame.
Well, it's not the mere fact that they haven't won from 9 fixtures. It's the point that they're getting hammered virtually every other week. So it's difficult to be able to turn that around, Eddie. And the confidence that we're seeing from the people above them, they perhaps might be looking at one thing. And who would have thought this? They may be just looking at the black and whites. If they could just grab a couple of wins throughout the season and Hull continue with their downfall, maybe that could be a battle royal. And let's face it, it looks likely, whether we want it or not, they're going to copy the carbon copy, like I said last week, in regards to the fact that there'll be no relegation and there will be no promotion. Now, that doesn't mean to say that the lower clubs in the Premiership and the second division that can't get to Super League status. You've got to do what they do in Australia. They expand. They don't just stick with 12 teams or 14 teams or whatever. They expand, and we've seen that. We saw it with over the years. We've seen it with Canberra. We've seen it with the Melbourne Storm. We've seen it up in Queensland. So they're obviously copying, and we discussed it at great length last week. They're copying. That what they want to do is they want to try to get as much money as possible, get people behind the club, and let's face it, if you're going to put and fork out maybe £1.5 million, £2 million a year. Said, I love Rugby League, I love my team, I want to back them. You don't want to run the risk of spending all that money and being relegated. And whether all the clubs will accept that, I've no idea.
Well, we'll come on to that in a minute because, as I say, this meeting is taking place as we speak of all 36 Rugby League clubs and members. So as I say, let's look at that in more depth in a minute. But yeah, you're right about Hull. 7 defeats in a row now. After their first 2 wins. Adam Pearson previously hardly noted for his patience in the face of adversity in the past, he's calling for unity at the club. Fans, coaches, players, staff members. And he's given Tony Smith the dreaded vote of confidence.
Oh, dearie me. Oh, dearie me. Look, that situation, you're right about his lack of patience. I mean, remember, he virtually on Sky Television announced that the coach had gone.
He did?
A lot of people perhaps don't realise that there's a rumoured to be at least 19, 20 players off contract at the end of the season. I mean, that could be a devastating blow. Where are they going to, if they lose all those 20 players, where on earth are they going to substitute them from? Where are they going to get those players from to come into them? And if you're fighting a relegation battle, not many players will think, oh, well, there could be a risk that I'm not playing in Super League next year.
And they might have already been told, some of them, that they're not in the plans for 2024 and beyond. So, OK, we've got Hull and Wakefield seem to be battling it out just now to avoid the big drop. Lee Leopards, they got a 30-0 win at Wakefield. They're now 8 points. 8 points, Stevo, for Lee. 4 wins, same as St Helens. Are Lee safe? I know it's early days and anything can happen, but are Lee looking as though they're going to survive?
Well, I'd have to say yes, because you'd look at the fact, will they have at least 4 wins through the season? That's quite difficult. To get those 8 points on that league ladder is probably going to be a safe enough cushion to stay clear of maybe a fight back from Wakefield or the Black and Whites, Hull.
Well, Lee are on 8 points, as I say, the same as Saints, which is an amazing achievement so far. And talking of the Saints, another defeat for them. Their 4th defeat of the season so far. Now, look, they wouldn't swap the title of World Club Champions, I know that. But that trip to Penrith in Australia looks, on the face of it, to have taken an awful lot out of them. You would have expected, wouldn't you, that Saints would have recovered by... I mean, they did the week after. They hammered Castleford. They looked brilliant. But since then, they've fallen in a little bit of a hole.
I think injuries have played their part. It does in every single club. We know that. But I think the St Helens have sort of been hit by crucial injuries to, shall we say, crucial players, positional play as well. And let's not forget, they're not getting any younger. There comes a time when you're not at your 100%. And I just get the feeling that some of the older players just don't have that ability to what they've shown over the last 5-6 seasons. And it's difficult, Eddie. Maybe that's when you win something of that nature. Maybe that just pressed the pin into the balloon. It just exploded a little bit.
The team that beat St Helens on Friday was Hull Kingston Rovers. First time they've beaten St Helens in 8 seasons. They're 3rd in the table now, Hull KR. What a job Willie Peters is doing. And personally, Mikey Lewis and Jordan Abdul, fantastic.
Yeah, and I'm pleased that Sean Wayne has decided to push aside the tried and tested. He's bringing in new young talent. Okay, it's a massive squad, but it's given the opportunity to what a boost for these young players. It's sensational to be saying, hey, the England coach has selected me as a on the train-on squad. That's a huge lift. Anybody that's coming through into the ranks, and the man who's in charge of the internationals, and he says, you're on my list. Boy, they'll play out of their skin.
Well, Stevo's talking here about Sean Wayne's squad. He announced his first 40-man train-on squad for the test match against France in Warrington on Saturday week. And Stevo's absolutely bang on, because it's the changing of the guard. Half of the squad haven't figured at senior international level before. It's a stepping stone to the future, this, bearing in mind World Cup 2025. Matty Ashurst, Tyler Dupree, Lewis Dodd, Mikey Lewis, the likes, all getting the nod. George Williams, Stevo, has been named as the captain of the team. You're obviously impressed.
Oh, without a doubt. Look, Williams was, in my mind, the only top player that really performed on that game against in the semi-final against Samoa. He tried his heart out. I'm not saying that the others didn't, but he was capable of creating things at a time when they needed it. And he nearly pulled it off. Just one person nearly pulled off, maybe to just go to, it went to extra time, we understand that. He must have been devastated. And look, I think his selection as a skipper is a wonderful, wonderful way for Sean Wayne to say, look, he's our leader. And he is. He's been outstanding at Warrington. And Wigan shut him down. And there are ways and means of doing that. And that's making sure that not one person goes on a defensive effort with him, but you have 2 and 3. They came out wide and forced him down the middle. Now, his game is getting the 3 quarters moving, getting the centres coming out wide. Wigan forced him down that channel, down the middle. That's the way that you can, shall we say, put someone off their game. And Wigan did it. But I think it's a wonderful move by Sean Wayne. Williams as captain gets my nod any time of the day. But also, Wayne gets my nod for the fact that is mentioned 20 uncapped players. What a boost it is for these youngsters to be named as could-be starters for the next World Cup.
And France will be the opposition at Warrington. Now, they're heavily Super League based, of course, with the Catalan Dragons. They'll be well represented. But with all due respect, England should beat them and beat them easily. Now, doesn't England need some meaningful opposition internationally? Tonga have been muted as possible tourists this year. But there are rumours now of a 4-nations tournament involving the Aussies, the Kiwis, Samoa and Tonga at the end of the year. And that could completely scupper the plan. Where do England get meaningful international opposition from ahead of the World Cup in 25?
It's very difficult, Eddie, but I think what you've also got to take into account is that, once again, the Aussies have got in first. They know how important it is to have a round robin with 4 teams. They know how important it is to prepare them for the next World Cup. Maybe we have to go and turn the clock back somewhat. In other words, put them in against these 20 uncapped players and see how they respond to it.
Well, that wouldn't be good commercially, Stevo, would it? Fair play, it wouldn't. I mean, we've had it before, the not state of origin, I can't remember what it was called now. What was it called when we had England against the rest of the world?
Yeah, I understand that. And that was a situation where, we couldn't get a strong competition.
Well, here we go again.
Yeah, but if you're left with nothing, Eddie, I'd rather have something. Bring a brother. I'd just say, right, you 20 uncapped players, you're going to be on one side and you're going to play against all the big guys and do that. I mean, in 1972, when we had the World Cup, we played 2 games against club sides. And it was beneficial to us, even though we won, convincingly. But the thing is, at least it got us into sort of the team spirit side of things. It's not just on the field of play that's so important. It's also off the field of play. And I'm talking about in the days where a lot of Lancashire players or Cumbrian players wouldn't speak to the Yorkshire players. And there again, we also had the county championship. So we had players playing against, I was playing against the best hookers, each position, and every single game, Cumberland as we were called those days, you were up against a guy that he not only eager, he would spill blood and be selected for Great Britain. It's that getting them moulding together. I know it's all right to say, the French aren't all that good and this and the other. You've got to have more than just one game. And the county championship, whether they want to bring it back again, I have no idea. Maybe that's something that IMG are even thinking about. But the most important thing is getting a squad that's playing against somebody on a regular basis, not just once in the season, but 3 times in the season.
Well, that's all for the future. But, you know, I don't really think that IMG or the Rugby Football League at the moment are thinking about that because, as we say, right now, and we'll talk about the results of this meeting next week, right now they are meeting to discuss the future. We've got Hull, Kingston Rovers and Salford in the top 6. Promoted Lee going well. And we're talking, Stevo, as I say, as the clubs are meeting right now, voting on IMG's plans for the future. The vote is purely on their grading proposals. Batley, they want a secret ballot to be made public and transparent. Wakefield have said they will vote against the proposals, due no doubt to their current plight. Castleford are rumoured to be voting against also. So not everything in the garden is rosy for IMG. Batley, Keighley, as we mentioned on the podcast previously, they're leading the campaign to have these proposals thrown out. What happens, Stevo, if they have succeeded? Where does the game go from there?
Look, it's difficult for IMG. What do? They voted to bring in IMG to do it. Are they going to come? It surprised me. And they said, right, well, in the opening sort of months and weeks, we want to find out what you, the fans, want. Well, if you ask the fans, they'll say, oh, we'd rather just have it as it is now. There's not many clubs. How many Wakefield fans will want to back what's happening? You know, Wakefield could be the last team to be relegated in the history of Rugby League. Since 1895, see you later. You've got to understand that if they're coming up with something new, then bite the bullet. But we don't seem to have the guts to do that.
Well, we don't seriously believe, do we, that this vote will go against the IMG proposals? The Rugby Football League itself, the governing body, now in with Super League, in the same office together at the Etihad in Manchester, they have recommended acceptance. It's going to be accepted. I'm sure it is.
Well, it's got to be if we go in that step towards the future. Look, I can remember many, many years ago when you didn't get a lot of money from the TV or whatever, but there was a substantial amount that went to the clubs. And they brought in people from outside to change the complexion. And the first thing that they put at the top of the heading said, we have to get rid of Eddie Waring. He's too northern, he's too this, that and the other. And you know what happened, Eddie? The company that was given the opportunity to change Rugby League so many years back, they just tore it up and said, can't do without Eddie Waring.
Yeah, you know, I take my hat off to Eddie Waring and the BBC because they kept the game going nationally on television for so many years. But when he just said that, the way forward is to get rid of Eddie. My heart skipped a beat until he said Waring. I'm sorry, but look, I know exactly what you're saying.
Eddie, don't get upset. There are 1,000 out there that wanted to get rid of us. Don't worry. and there'll be 1,000 out there that want to get rid of the current mob. Look, you can't please everybody. It's as simple as that. But will IMG have the guts and the determination to say, we're going to do it whether you like it or not? That's the big question.
Well, we will find out and we will reflect on everything that comes out of this meeting next week. The great thing about the game at the moment is we've got so many good young players coming through, as you've already mentioned. Senior internationals never have played before, but they're in the squad for Sean Wayne, about 20 of them. And one of them, Lewis Dodd, this youngster, his drop goal won the World Club Challenge for St Helens against Penrith. Suddenly, Australia sat up and take notice of him. And now he's hotly tipped to be on his way to the NRL at the end of this season. West Tigers are reportedly really keen, although one official at St Helens has advised him not to go to West. So I don't know why.
Well, they haven't won a game. They're at the bottom of the league.
That could be the reason.
Listen, take your Einstein's cap off, right? And just get yourself under the situation. Why would you want to go to the bottom of the table? And then I think to myself, that's what I did in 1973.
I was going to say.
Penrith Panthers were the wooden spooners, and I signed to go there. Thankfully, we never finished up as wooden spooners during my 5 years there. And it's all down to one thing: money. You don't get many opportunities in life, Eddie. You don't get many opportunities in rugby league. If someone's going to throw that check at you, you're going to take it. Why not? Dodd's a great player.
Well, I would personally like to see Lewis Dodd staying in the Super League because I find him absolutely fantastic to watch. But
so would I. But the lure of going there. And we were talking earlier about a player that's on nearly $500,000 Aussie dollars a season, wanting to come back to the UK. I can't find any team that is going to pay that amount of money. But he wants to come back to play rugby league because he's not getting the opportunity down there.
Indeed.
Look, everyone that goes down to Australia, they're not always a success. But sometimes they pay a lot of money for being unsuccessful.
Well, that is true. And if Lewis does go to West, they do finish bottom of the table this year, and he relights the fire of the West Tigers, he becomes a local hero. I can understand that 100%. But one signing that has gone through has come in the women's game this week. The Young Player of the Year from 2022, Holly Maydodd. Now, in no relation to Lewis, as far as I'm aware, she has signed for the Canberra Raiders women from York Valkyrie in the NRLW competition and will take up her new role next month. Georgia Roche of Leeds, the inaugural Super League Woman of the Year 2018, seems set to follow her. Georgia Wilson left Wigan Warriors some time ago from the Queensland Cup, and Leeds' Fran Goldthorpe is yet another British woman linked with a move down under. The women's game is growing, particularly in Australia, where they're throwing money at it and they're paying their players.
Look, I say good luck to all these female players. Some of the matches I've watched, I thoroughly enjoy.
The England supporters for this international against the French, also at Warrington on Saturday week, they get the chance to see the women play at international level. And Jodie Cunningham of St Helens has been named as the new England captain. What's happening down under, Stevo? You're the man with the ear close to the ground. Who's causing trouble? Who's moving on? Who's having a bash at somebody else? What's going on?
There was a young kid that's come over the last 2 seasons playing for the Sydney Roosters, a young lad called Sam Walker. And he was destined to be the biggest thing coming from the junior ranks. He's a great little player. He's got a good kicking game. He's got everything there. But unfortunately, it just hit rock bottom. And Trent Robinson, now the Roosters, back-to-back defeats. He's had to do something. He's dropped this young kid. He's a super player. But I suppose there's many times when they say, they know how to block him out. When he first came on the scene, he was difficult to handle. But the opposition coaches now, they've got to a situation and they just battle him into the ground. And it's just a shame. I hope that Robinson realises, and I'm sure, look, Trent Robinson's a tremendous coach. And he probably hopes that it'll just give him a kick up the backside for young Sam Walker, and he will eventually come to the top. I wish him all the best.
Yeah, we all do. There are players battling through adversity, I'm sure, all across the world. Okay, well, 4 years, Stevo. 4 years since the microphone went.
On.
I can't believe. Get the tissues.
Get the tissues out again. Deary me. Well, if that's the case, then it must be somewhere around that area where 7 years ago.
Yes.
I left.
You did? I know you were 3 years before me. Listen, what this program, this podcast proves, you can't keep 2 good men down, Stevo. Full stop.
Hang on. Who's the other one?
Hey, always great to talk to you. Have a chuckle, have a laugh, and keep in touch with the great game. We'll talk again next week.
That's fine, top man. You look after yourself. Well, you always have done. Bye.